For some, it has been that people have had to work from home. Many of the things in terms of meetings, in terms of sessions like this, has had to be online. Maintaining social distance, as well as, washing hands, plus wearing masks, which we were not used to before. But now it has become part of our life, our day-to-day routine. So yes, especially more than any other time, this theme is so relevant for us to look at. So keeping hope alive. Whilst we're in the midst of a lot of changes and maybe uncertainties, maybe there's a lot of unknown fears, there's a lot of challenges. How do we keep hope alive? And why is it so important? Hope is very important for achieving any kind of success. And I'm not just talking about academic success or financial success, but for any fulfillment of life. And so I'm going to share a few thoughts with you. I'll be sharing some stories and some incidents, and then a few tips which are very dear to me, that has helped me to keep moving on, to keep expecting the best, keep the positive attitude. So let me start off with some stories and some real life incidents where we can take inspiration from. Many of you are familiar with the story of the 4 candles, and there's different versions of it. The one that I'm familiar with is the one I'm going to share. There was these 4 candles that were lit, and they were named peace, love, faith, and then hope. And they were nicely lit, and there was beautiful glow. But suddenly something happened, just like what we probably saw, what happened to us this year. And slowly by slowly, the flame of peace started to question its existence and said, well, when there is so much chaos, there's so much anger, there's so much peacelessness around, how can I remain lit? And the flame is blown. The same thing happened to love. That when people are not able to even love their nearest ones as much now, when there is so much yours and mine, and there's so much, various reasons people are fighting, maybe for little things. So how can I continue to shine? And here goes love as well. And then faith, trust, also realizes that I'm not indispensable anymore. And so how can I continue to carry on? And so what happens that eventually all these 3 candles stop being ignited. And here's a sweet child who comes in and is talking to these candles, saying, how come you were supposed to be lit, and why are you not lit? But then he looks around and he finds that there's one candle which is still being lit, which is still there, and that was hope. And so hope says, do not worry, I'm still there, and I'll help you to lit the other candles. So this is actually our story, and very current to what we're seeing today. That amidst all the changes that we have to adjust to, if we are not able to embrace them, and if we continue to resist them and lose our hope, is there a way out? Are we able to then continue in a way that is satisfactory? We may continue for a little while, but there is either aggression, irritation, hopelessness, depression. And truly, we are seeing many of these things more and more in the world. But we're not here to talk about those things. We're here to talk about how this word hope, if we understand and accept, then we're able to put other things into its place. Talking about the beginning of this organization, the Brahma Kumaris, which many of you know about, or you can find out more about it. With very humble beginning and lots of challenges to face. It started way back in 1936. And there were so many challenges in terms of, picketing, in terms of people finding ways to stop the activities and events. But the founding members that time and the people who were meditating and practicing this way of meditation continued to have this hope. And with that positivity, that one day people will understand the importance of what we are doing. And today we see there are activities offered in more than 100 countries. Similar stories when we started in the West in 1970s. There was very few people who even knew much about meditation. And it wasn't a word that was commonly used or accepted. You were questioned. But today, because again the founding members, and many of you know them, the head of our organization, Dadi Janki, who passed away earlier in end of March, and some of these seniors that you see now when you probably recently heard their sessions, Sister Jayanti, Sudesh Didi, and others, they continued to put that positive effort, to have that hope. And today we see that from here in England, this word has spread to many, many parts of the world. So these are just some stories to remember that challenges will come, but how we deal with it is what's going to decide the outcome of it. I was just also remembering that in my childhood, I used to be in Dubai, and there was not all these commercial shows that we see today. There were hardly any theaters or any entertainment places, which is what you see it's full of today. And even the TV programs that we used to get, we used to have very few choices. And one of the things that was often relayed on the TVs was boxing, the wrestling matches. And not that I remember much of it now, but one thing that I had actually learned in my childhood, that it's not about we should not fall down, but it's how quickly can I get back and then able to face the challenge that has come. So that's what I learned from that game, that matches. So life is about getting up and moving on, keeping that hope and using these things as a stepping stone, as opposed to, just allowing that to become much bigger than ourselves. We have a very beautiful song, a meditation song in Hindi, which is the lyrics, the meaning of the lyrics is that do not tell God how big your problems are, but tell the problems, the situations, that your God, your supporter, that higher source is far more bigger and is my friend. So what do we need to do to keep this hope alive? There's a few thoughts that I had in mind that I'd like to share with you. One of the things that I think most people are focusing on, whilst, when we had proper lockdowns and there's a lot more time for reflection, many, of course, they were even more busier, but mass majority had a little bit more time than at times before. And the people that I've been conversing with, I've had the opportunity to meet and talk, either on phone or in person with that social distancing. One of the things is simplify. People wanting to simplify. And it's been time to clear out, to do things that hadn't been done. And many of them really were saying that how it's been actually a blessing in disguise. So in order to instill hope in any situation, let's simplify. And also let's have this positive attitude that my life and the situations that come in my life are there as a reminder. Are there as a reminder to say how more positive I can be and how true I can be to myself and to others, as well as use them as a stepping stones. Because it's really our choice whether we see situations as a problem or we see situations as an opportunity for us to grow. It's really in our hands. And the more I see this as an opportunity to grow, the more then I'll be able to keep that hope alive and see better results. So simplicity and positivity. And for positivity, I would suggest something that we've been talked about in our meetings, on our online sessions, is that how often during the day am I able to check? And one of the very nicest and easiest suggestions that has been made is every hour on the hour. Let me just pause and see what my thoughts has been in the last hour. And if that has been positive, then carry on and make more positive things happen. But if it's had been ordinary or of worry, of anxiousness, can I pause and see if I can change that? Because worry is not going to solve situation. There's these equations we often say that if worry is going to change, let me do something about it. If worry is going to help me to make things better, no, it's going to worsen things. So, okay, there are things that in front of us, maybe relationship, maybe what we're facing now, COVID, or anything, including that, our mind may be quite fickle at the moment, quite, deceptive. But how I can take ownership and guide it on a positive direction, it's really up to me. So simplify, and that positivity really. How and what can I do to make that change and shift in my perception? And the simplest and the most profound tip is, do you want to be? If you want to, then you'll find the way. Because for each of us, different things will work. Yes, we'll share a few thoughts, but really, if I just quieten my mind and ask myself, how can I do things differently? And even sometimes when we're not so positive, or we've gone through a situation, but take this pause and to check and see where I can change when a similar situation arises in future. How differently can I act? Because that itself will give you an answer. Maybe you could have been a bit more quieter. Maybe you could have been a bit more positive. Maybe you could have moved on. Maybe you could have withdrawn. So the answer will come. But what is important is that pauses during the day. And for me, I think it's been a great help. We've been practicing this for many, many years. Here in Raj Yoga, we call it the traffic control. Just as you see red lights and you're driving, or, when you see a red light when you see crossing the road and you see a certain light, you don't cross the road. So you pause and you wait. And then once the right color is shown, then you move on. So if I'm habituated to take these pauses every hour, more frequently if you can manage, even if you can't manage every hour, then as often as you can during the day. But it shouldn't be that, many days passes by and then we look back a few months later, a few years later and think, well, I could have done things differently. When we've heard about different people in their 80s, in their 90s, the different regrets that they've had. One common thing that you often hear them say is that I wish I had spent more time with my family. I wish I had spent more time with myself. So now is the time to remind ourselves. Many of these things that I'm sharing and many other sessions that you listen to, it's not that you're not aware, but it's always good to be reminded. And in terms of simplifying, it's not just simplifying the clutter, but also our thinking. Do I need to be this judgmental? Do I need to be, having these thoughts? Let me just simplify. And then one other practical thing that I'd like to share in terms of the tips is being aware, or bringing that awareness in your mind of different relationships. Say if you were a doctor, what would you do? Say if you were a parent, what would you do? Say if you were a real friend, what would you do? So it is like learning to be your own parent, learning to be your own doctor, and learning to be your own friend. Let's take some of these relationships. Say a child is very sick and the doctors has given up. But what would parents do? The good parents would always say, we'll try till the very last moment. Doctors has given up. There's no hope of this child surviving anymore. But the parents say, well, if they're not going to survive, why waste all this money? Parents would say, let me try this, let me try that, and let me try this. Along with all these external things, they would have good wishes, they would have prayers, meditation. And so is the case of a doctor. I'm sure many of you watching this session would agree that there's been so much appreciation of all the doctors and the key workers who work so hard and are still working very hard. Many of them we don't even know, but we can visualize, we can imagine what they would need to go through to make sure that the least of the people are affected. And I'm sure many of you, every Thursday for many months, we used to, at 8 o'clock at night, we get out of our houses and cheer them up for the hard work they've done. And it's not just the doctors and nurses in the front line. Of course, they're very much that. But also many, many incognito workers who've made sure that humanity as such, people around are safe and the least harm is done. So if I increase this awareness, I may not be a physical doctor in terms of the education and the ability to actually, monitor or to advise in terms of medication or to operate. But let me be like the spiritual surgeon along with the higher power. Doctors would also, in a very friendly way, advise us what we can do, what we can't do. But if you see if the doctor was very rude or very harsh, then they don't receive blessings. So let me keep this hope. Let me be kind to people. Let me give the assurance. And that assurance and that positivity, I guarantee, will bring more positivity. But if I am talking about hopelessness, about depression, about this is going to be wrong and that's going to be wrong, and if my focus is only how many cases today and how many died and how many survived, okay, it is important for us to be aware. But my focus should be, so what can I do to generate, like a doctor, like a parent, like a true friend, so this world is in a better place. So one of the other aspects, besides checking at irregular intervals and seeing where my thoughts are, and how often, if they are going into the negative or of worry, of anxiousness, how soon can I change that? One other thing we can do is to do more meditation. Or if you're not so familiar with meditation, prayers, whatever you may normally do. Even if you're not into that, just sitting in silence, having good wishes. But this time, not just for us, ourselves, and our nearest family, but the world at large. And when I talk about world at large, I'm also meaning that elements, animals, nature. Because how often do we remember to do that? We find that we are actually not often thanking them enough. And now all these things that we're seeing is actually a reminder that many of these things that we have taken for granted, and some of us also have misused them. And even we may have not consciously misused them, we haven't taken any measures to actually prevent it. And maybe it is too late to do things on an external level, but certainly through my thoughts, which is actually far more profound then external steps, and where I can take external steps, let me do that too. But how can I serve the elements? How can I serve not just humanity, but also the animals, and certainly the wide world? This needs to be a regular thing that we do, not just occasionally, but on a daily basis, preferably a few times a day. So starting your day with that positive thoughts of gratitude. So that's the third thing I'd like to talk about. If we count all the wonderful things that we're still provided with, all the wonderful things we still have, and also let's appreciate the things that may not be there today with us, but we had them. And we were able to use them, we were able to take happiness from them. So thanks to them too. So thanksgiving is very, very important. And sometimes it's these simple things that can shift major things. But if I get into this attitude of I am not getting enough, or I am not enough, what you find that no matter how much we will be surrounded with, or no matter what people will do for us, there wouldn't be that inner satisfaction. So yes, I would like to touch upon gratitude and that inner satisfaction. And one of the easiest way and the most powerful way to do that is learning to connect with the highest source. As we connect with the highest source, our self-respect increases. And as our self-respect increases, there is that feeling of being full, of being complete, as in there's nothing lacking. And when there is that sense of nothing lacking, then you're able to give. Yeah, if I'm a bankrupt myself, I cannot really donate things, can I? But here we're not talking about that kind of bankruptcy. I'm talking about here. The more I fill myself, start your day with those things. And at different intervals throughout the day. Easiest way to remember, every hour on the hour if you can manage. Even if it's just for a few seconds, even if you can't manage a minute or two, just a few seconds. At longer period, beginning of the day, and maybe in the evening. And before going to rest, before going to sleep at night. Again, just thanking and counting your stars, counting all the things that you have been gifted with. And trust me, they're far more than the things we may not have. But if my focus changes from seeing what I have to seeing what I don't have, then there will never be a place in time, not for long anyway, where I'll be content and satisfied. And in Hindi, there's this beautiful saying, that contentment is the highest wealth. And once that wealth comes, all the other wealth is quite inferior compared to that. So in order to keep hope alive, that contentment is necessary. And one of the easiest way, or the most profound way, is looking at all the things that you're gifted with, that God has given you. God's supreme higher power, higher source, universe, however you'd like to look at it. your choice. But remember that that's what's happening. And you will see that there's a smile on your face, because there's a smile internally, there's that happiness, there's that contentment. When that hope is there, enthusiasm comes quite easily. And we find different things to do, even in the simplest things. One of the recent examples that I was thinking of, one of my colleagues' mother is not well and she's been hospitalized. And I was just chatting with her a few days ago. And when I was chatting with her and her mother, it felt like I could question them, are you really in a hospital or are you out there to picnic? And what the aim has always been for them is, how can I make every situation, every scene as something to learn and make it the best. And so it was quite a critical situation in terms of health, but not one ounce of worry or anxiousness. But in fact, there was more joy. Can we do that for various challenges that we are likely to face or are facing? Because it was a scene of touch and go, but even then, the memory is that there was just so much joy. So we may have little in compared to physical things, but nobody's stopping us from being happy. Nobody's stopping us from being peaceful. Nobody's stopping us from sharing extra love. And actually, why we do what we do, why do we also want things, is to be happy. But if I can just be that, even without the things, wouldn't that be a good thing to do? Wouldn't that be useful? So yes, my friends, keeping that hope alive and seeing the best, and the best will come. That positivity. And as I said, the more I connect with that higher source, the more that I'm able to receive. Because what happens when I connect with the higher source, or some of you may want to see it as connecting with the universe, the availability is 24/7. And the more I take and the more I share, the more comes back to me. There's no decreasing. It's actually just more investment and more coming back to me. So it is very important that I keep connecting and keep reminding of what God has gifted me with. And not just that, keep sharing. Because it's in sharing that we multiply. You know, this kind of giving is such that the more I give, the more it multiplies. And this is what we've seen during lockdown, during the tough times anywhere in the world. As people are coming out of their shells, you know, providing food, providing whatnot. So whatever way I can make a difference, let me do it. Because whatever I do, even if it's the simplest act, the ripples that we can see, the effect it has, is multifold, if not multi-millionfold. So sometimes you think, okay, well, they're doing it. Should I also be doing it? Okay, if you can do similar things, fine. If not, you find out, you work out what is best that you can offer and offer that. So as you offer that, then that increases. Because it's always in giving that we increase. Okay, I'm going to pause for a short reflection and then I'll share a few more thoughts. So sit back relaxed. Breathing gently but deeply. Let me park on the side all the challenges that I am facing at the moment. But let me take this time to reflect within and to see and appreciate what life has offered me so far and is still offering me. Let me think of a few things and list it in my mind. And allow this feeling of gratitude to emerge. That thanks from my heart that I've just been surrounded by so much. And I'm not just thinking about physical things, that too. Let me think about the friends. Let me think about all these beautiful people who shared that wisdom, their experience with me. Who made me the person I am. Let me think of the joy I had at various times. Let me keep that alive. And as I interact with people, let me remember to share with others. That joy, that happiness. The feeling of belonging. That goodness that I was surrounded by. At various times that I felt I could have been in a difficult situation, I felt the protection from up above, to the good wishes of people who cared for me. Let me thank them. And keep that the forefront of my mind. So as I get by into my day-to-day routine, I don't forget that. When you're ready, you can bring back your focus to where you are. So this is kind of thoughts you could have when you take your pauses during the day. Just loving that feeling of fulfillment, of being so rich. And yeah, I cannot underline enough, as is my vision and the way I perceive things will bring the reality for me. If I think the world is bad, the world is going to go into chaos, the world is this, that, and the other, I'm going to see more of it. And I'm not saying externally these things will not happen. They will. Probably more than what we're seeing today. I'm not wanting to scare you, but this is our way of preparation. That the more I focus on the positive, the more positive outcome will come out of something that is not so good. I'd like to share a simple story here. There was a construction site and there was some building work going on. And this was the times where, the mobiles were not there. And the main person in the construction site had gone up on the top floor where the building work was still continuing. And the person he wanted to get attention was right down, picking up stones and sand and things like that. I was quite a few floors on the top, so he's shouting his name, but he obviously can't hear. So he throws his handkerchief from up there, and it was not so easy for him to come down, because then going back would be difficult. It was a construction site. You can visualize a building happening and all this scaffolding, and to get up on the scaffolding and coming down just to have this conversation. He needed that person, the person who was, a workman, to get up there. So he throws his handkerchief, doesn't notice. He says, okay, I can probably throw some money. Yeah, I'm sure he will notice that. He throws the money, that workman doesn't notice that. So eventually he's thinking, what can I do? For that he becomes aware. And then he has a pebble somewhere and he throws that, and that makes a sound. And the workman looks up as to where it's come from. And that's when he's able to connect with the surveyor. And he's asked to come up. Now, what do we make out of this story? You can have your own thoughts. But one of the things that this story tells us is often that we are surrounded by good things. Money, handkerchief, comforts, whatever. We probably do not look up as to what Time is telling us as to what the higher source is signaling us. But when we have situations like that stone hurting us or hitting us, or just a sound around us, we start looking up. We start connecting. And then what needs to happen, the work can carry on. See if the higher source, things in your universe wanted to change, it can happen, just so quickly. Clap a finger. But know it will happen with all our collective effort together. And when there is that collective effort, when there is that unity and harmony, then we'll actually see a lot more positivity. We cannot all do everything, but we can do what we can. And let's not stop doing that. Some will share through meditation. Some will provide blankets and food and other facilities. Some will share through their wisdom. Some financially support others. Some through their expertise. Whatever way I can, let me do it. If I can do most of it, even better. Let's all collectively keep this flame of hope always lit. So even if the others are diminishing or even totally blown off, like the story that we heard earlier, we can light them again. But not to lose hope. And this is what we have seen personally, for many, many of our seniors, as we call them. And many of you familiar with Dadi Janki, I mentioned earlier, who was very dear to many of us, hundreds of thousands of people who knew her. When we'd seen her in action, there are certain things that she would have shared with us and had this thought for us. And many times it's taken 5 years, 10 years or more to make that happen. She never lost hope. Or next time when she saw you, she didn't remind you that, look, I told you, but you have still not done it. But what used to happen is next time you saw her, she would add to it. That you could even do this, you could even do this. It's just like, okay, you reached here, then she'll say, okay, you can reach here, you can reach here. So sky was the limit, or maybe sky even was not the limit. So many underlining qualities, but that hope that, in our spiritual study, we have this saying, the star of hope will then become a star of success. And the other aspects that we often talk about along with hope is happiness and harmony. And we have also run quite a few sessions about that. Hope, harmony, happiness, or hope, happiness, harmony. Whatever, whichever one you want to put in the front or second or third. They're all interlinked. So when one comes, the other comes. But yes, if you lose hope, then there's not much margin of others coming in. So just to reiterate a few things, to keep that hope alive, to keep that flame alive, and that positivity, and that happiness. The more I connect with the highest source, the more I fill myself, the more I share, the more good wishes come back to me, just keeps on multiplying, and more I'm able to share. And what can I do to unify people that I'm in connection with, and even through my thoughts, the whole world at large? You will find that, yes, there are people who, even in situations like what we're facing today, have their own agendas that they are pursuing. But you'll find that mass majority are wanting unity, wanting harmony. And I want to be one of them, isn't it? So to have these conscious thoughts of what can I do? And sometimes it's very simple things. You just let go. You just say, it's okay. It doesn't matter. You know, there are much bigger things that I need to be aware of. It's something that I remember my father used to tell me, that to win a war, you have to lose various battles. But sometimes we hold on to small things, but we forget that there are so many other things that we are losing out on. So it's really a time to look within, that what is it that is actually my own perception, a part of my personality, that actually is a barrier. And that is invoking a lot more challenges than there are. And one of them is resistance to change. There could be many things, but I'd like to address this for a minute. What is it that I am resisting? You know, often we resist things that are not so useful, but for some reason we are very comfortable. It's like, there's a saying that one of my service companions used to share, that it's better the devil I know than the one I don't. So we're not willing to look within and to see what more can I do to improve. Because maybe there is fear, maybe we are not happy where we are, but we're still comfortable because it's a known place to be. But let's not be afraid. Let's take this challenge as a stepping stone and not something to be worried about. And, you know, once we've tried a number of times, if we are not so successful, and I'm pleased when I use the word success, it's not about the worldly success that I'm talking about. That could also be, but you know what I'm talking about on a spiritual level. When I find that it's not working, because I know the previous ways anyway, so if I need to come back to it, it's okay. So let's not be scared of looking within and allowing that spring cleaning to happen. Because we're probably surrounded by lots of cobwebs, but we're scared because it's so much of hard work. But actually, you know, once you start cleaning, anytime you've done spring cleaning, anytime you cleared the clutter, and this is what we've been hearing, that during the lockdown periods, a lot of people have focused on doing things in terms of cleaning the clutter, in terms of, you know, spring cleaning physically, but it's also internally. Once there's all these cobwebs and the clutter is out, wow, what a beautiful place there would be for us to be in. So in this time that we are externally facing, where does my safety lie? Is to keep this hope alive, to keep that positivity in my heart, to keep that flame glow, you know, shining and lit, and not allowing it to become less. It should increase on a daily basis. And okay, there are some days which may not be as successful, as powerful, spiritually, let me put an extra effort on the other days then, so that I am going on a higher curve and not coming down, right? So happiness, harmony, that goes along with this hope. And the more I am positive, the more I am able to do this. I'm actually going to be able to be helpful to the world and myself. I'm going to take a pause here again. We'll have another reflection. So sit back relaxed, the feet on the ground, and taking your thoughts within, breathing in gently but deeply, and breathing out. And let me recall all the good things that has happened, that I have witnessed. And allow this heart of mine to be full of gratitude and oozing with gratitude. And through my thoughts, let me thank the higher source. Let me thank all the people who have taught me different things. And also take this opportunity to serve the elements, the wonderful nature, animals, and the wide world. And through my thoughts, especially reaching out to people in need, people who are facing loneliness, isolation, probably mental challenges, who may be sleeping rough. The war-torn zones. Let me reach out to everyone, sharing that hope and peace. When you're ready, bring back your attention to where you are. Thank you for your kind attention. Just to remind you that next Tuesday we'll have our online Christmas do, and our main speaker is going to be Sister Maureen. And I wish you all a very happy holidays. Stay safe, stay well, and we'll connect with you soon. Thank you once again.